Hey everyone, it's Jeannie here, and today I am so glad to be joined by one of gospel music's most popular voices. And she's an evangelist, a fashion designer, and is now adding author to her title of ministries, Kierra Sheard Kelly. Congratulations, you're also a newlywed, but welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be chatting with you, Jeannie.
Absolutely. I love your music. And, it just takes us there. That's what we need, music that does that. And I'm grateful for artists as yourself. But you have a book. You've also translated that gift into writing. Talk about it. It's big, bold, and beautiful. I love that title.
Thank you. So actually, I did big because I wanted to encourage the reader because there's so many of us that have like these little personal insecurities that we don't really talk about. And I wanted to encourage the reader to know that I'm there with you. I can relate. So of course, we're in a progressive world where we're kind of moving forward and they're embracing more body positivity. But maybe your thing is not being a big woman, which this thing in my case is being a big woman. And I'm encouraging the woman, own that. Find what it is, why it's attached to you. Maybe you got a big personality. Maybe you have big feet, a big nose, or whatever it is. If it's big, own it, but find out why it's attached to your purpose in the earth. And so be bold about it and own it as if it's a form of beauty. Don't let the world define to you what beautiful is. And so that's what this book just kind of dives into. I'm so excited and proud of it. And I'm not just blowing smoke. I'm just really excited and proud of the content of the book. I really think it's going to inspire so many to own who they are.
Absolutely. Body positivity is such a big thing, especially amongst young girls. And just for context of what you're talking about, I used to be a pop star, and as a teenager, and they were constantly telling me about my body weight. And then I came and I became a Christian. And I realized that Jesus accepted me, if I had a muffin top or not. Can you kind of talk to that, the ownership that happens in your identity when you realize that it doesn't matter what the world says, but it matters what God says? Kind of how can we help girls embrace that?
Yeah, so I'll say for me, the journey that I had gone on was, I wrote in the book and I talk about the relationship that I was in. One of the relationships that was the dysfunctional space in my life. And of course, I had been cheated on. And so I also had to do, speaking of artistry and being in that space and having to kind of, I guess, embrace what the industry called as imaging. So I remember having to take photos for the first few projects that I had released. They were waist up. And I was like, I want to show who I am. I want to show, my body. Not putting it out there, but I would like to get a full frame. And so after a while, I was like, you know what? I'm going to speak up. And that was me speaking up for myself because first of all, the average American woman is a plus size woman. That's the truth of the matter. And I could not allow people to have me to feel like, oh, the only way you're beautiful is to be smaller, and of course I am an advocate of good health. So I'm totally about, eating your veggies, making sure that you're healthy to fulfill your purpose. But I think for me in the book, I talk about it. You can't let the world, again, identify what is success for you. Otherwise, you'll be going for something that may be unobtainable. It may not be a part of your purpose or in your view. And so this is me just encouraging, like you said, young women, just because they may say you're not a cup of tea, it doesn't mean that is not the truth. Let me say that. It just may not mean that you're called to be that cup of tea at their table, but you are a steamy hot cup of tea, if you allow me to say it. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I love that. I love embracing who you are and, your beauty. I know the book also talks about spiritual self-care. Can you kind of dive a little bit into that and what that looks like?
Absolutely. And I'm a zone in. I was just a little distracted.
That's okay.
um, Self-care is so important. And I'll use, for example, this seasonal bronchitis that I have. When I don't take care of myself, it flares up. And they say that it's chronic, but I've noticed that when I rest, And when I take, the proper amount of fluids and I'm getting what I need as far as, my spiritual peace and protecting my space, I sometimes don't have it to flare up as often, nearly as hard. And so this
Mm.
was, a natural fact and a natural revelation that connected to my spirituality, which is you have to rest. God, our Father, rested on the seventh day. And if he has all the power that he has, then surely you, as a human being who is built off of his breath, who is built off of, I think there was an analogy in the scripture where Jesus used dirt in his saliva. So if we're built with that, then surely you can take the time that you need, that the Bible speaks about on the Sabbath day, and that is to be rested and restored so that you can fulfill your purpose. And it's scientifically proven, because there are some of us that, oh, I need the facts. Here are the facts. It's scientifically proven that restoration is a part of the medicinal process for you to be healthy. And so I'm all about self-care. I'm all about, in the chapter, it says self-care and squad goals. So even being selective with those relationships, there's a chapter where I talk about fountain-like relationships versus draining-like relationships. And if you're being drained, that too is a part of your self-care. So your selections in your friendships, in your relationships, that has everything too to do with your self-care. If you're always having to explain the favor that rests on your life and the glory that rests on your life that a lot of people can't understand, that can be exhausting. So
Yeah.
I definitely am an advocate of self-care. I do dance workouts. I don't like the extraneous way of working out. So I have to dance to work out. It has to be enjoyable, but that's my form of self-care, So I think that hopefully that answers your question, but it's so important that you do what you need to do so that you're successful. Because if you're not successful, the enemy will use that against you to make you feel inadequate in those
Yeah.
days when you're not well rested or focused to make sure you're fulfilling that seat that you're called to be in. So it's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I've noticed with this generation is, if we're workers, we tend to be workaholics, and
Yes.
it's just not healthy. And especially in ministry, it can totally become that. So that's so special. Talk about just diving into some of the content. How was it for you to have to go, into the content and writing, sharing your own personal experiences? It can be very vulnerable and exposing at times. How was that for you?
So this was really a God thing for me, Jenny, because the book literally was like a diary for me. And I found the offer, the gracious and blessing offer, if you allow me to say it that way, in an email account that I hadn't been checking. I had just been led to check it. And I found this offer in the email, and I said, wait a second, this is a book offer from a legit publisher. And I followed through with it. I responded, and thank God it was like right on time. It wasn't too late. It was right on time. And they just asked, did you have a book? And I'm like, yeah, I've been writing for all of these years. And so I was
Wow.
literally able to bring my life story and literally my personal journey, which, to answer your question, was a form of therapy for me. And it just turned into a book. And in addition to some of the so-called sermons that I was practicing then, and it's now turned into like a devotional in the book. So I'm completely blown
Amazing.
away. But to answer your question directly, it is a form of therapy. I'm an open book, so I love just sharing my story, hoping that it'll provide solutions for someone else. So it was a blast to do it.
Yes. Well, you've had a very action-packed season, a book and an album, a Billboard #1 album, a marriage.
Yeah.
Well, let's tackle some of those. So I know you're going to release the deluxe version of your chart-topping album. Can you
Yeah.
share a little bit about that, and just kind of, was it a shock for you at how well received the album was during one of the craziest times in my existence? I'm sure probably in yours too, with the pandemic and just so much unrest. How was it for you, just realizing, God was using your music to minister to people during this crazy time?
Absolutely. It was bittersweet. That's what I've been saying. I lost my grandmother in this pandemic, and then the
Oh,
album
wow.
was released at the top of the pandemic. And I was like, usually there's a tour to follow so we can do good promotions. So I was really concerned, and I asked God, okay, out of all of this time I've been waiting, is this what you're going to hand me? And God showed me that he is yet in control and that he is still faithful and that he knows what's best. And so it was almost as if the Lord allowed my listeners and supporters to have a time to soak in all that he's doing through me and the answers that he provided with me through my music. And it was really good. It was refreshing. So to answer your question, I'm super excited about the deluxe project. There's a song on there with my mother who literally put me on the map. And she's the legend herself. The movie came out and I was able to
Yes.
play the role of her. And then there are these songs that are just transparent pieces. And it's all in God's timing because they were songs that connect with the space that I'm in now. So it's literally for me, almost as if I released two albums in one seasonal space, if that makes sense. So I'm
Wow.
really excited about the deluxe version. It's another transparent piece that I think a lot of people will be able to relate to.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to see your strength through this all. You've had a lot of emotional highs and lows, and I know your whole family got sick during the pandemic, and I was scheduled to talk to you during that same time, and, and I just found out and just was covering you guys in prayer, and, but it's also beautiful to see how you've been able to take everything you've been through and continue to build with content for us, and we appreciate you for sure. You're newlywed as well. How are you? How's it been? And if you could share advice for anybody that's out there waiting, I love that you're so transparent, that you've been so honest with your journey. There's so many people that have gleaned from it, but kind of talk about now this new season that you've entered in as a wife.
It's so special, Jeannie. I'm super excited and I absolutely adore my husband. He's my friend. We have a blast together. And the advice that I would give, Mr. Jordan Kelly has restored my hope. Like I already had said, oh, it's good men out there. Or sometimes I would say, oh, it ain't no good men out there. And I would always too say, oh, the only good man out there is my dad or my grandfather.
Right.
And so Jordan restored my hope or idea of humanity, actually, because
Mm,
I had experienced so many broken friendships and just disappointment in developing and cultivating other relationships outside of intimacy. And it was just a blessing to have my husband be my shining answer that says, no, there are some of us that loves the Lord, that are really about integrity, that are
mm,
all about companionship and a student at heart, where it's not we're just stuck. But he just gave me so many answers. And so it's a God thing. I don't even know how to keep going with that. But I will say, don't give up on yourself, ladies. Don't settle. Men too. Don't think that it has to be the end all be all. Because sometimes we'll get so tired of waiting and we'll just settle for the next best
right.
thing. Or we'll say
Right.
yes to the most different thing that we've had outside of dysfunction. And I also talk about that in the book. But hang in there and don't think. I had to tell one of my sisters the other day, she said, there are no good men. I said, if you say that, then you're basically saying that God is not capable to provide you with what you deserve. So stop speaking to, when you're thinking you're speaking to humanity, you're actually speaking to what God can do. And I think you should be
Mm.
careful because there's power in your tongue. So
Ooh.
not only will it speak to God's ability and character, but it also kind of reverses some things for you. God could be sending you the answer, but because you're speaking against it, it's not, you can't receive it. So those are some things that I would share. And I would also say what my dad said to me, the root word, and I talk about that in the book too. The root word of dating is data. We learned in elementary school that in science, you collect information for the final
Wow.
decision. So don't make yourself a wife to a boyfriend, like really take time and learn the individual. And that was something that I wasn't doing. And I finally did it. And we were going at a speed that I was like, oh, wait. But it was a speed that I still felt comfortable with. So those
Yeah.
are some tips I would share.
It's amazing you said that because I was gonna speak specifically to that. I have a really close friend of mine. She's a Black queen, but we had this conversation and she told me exactly what your friend said to you. She said, "There ain't no good man for Black women," is what she said to me, and it broke my heart in pieces because
Yeah.
I'm like, no, this is not the truth. In the
Yeah.
name of Jesus. But I'm excited that you've shared this in your book and that you're being a voice for other women who may feel that way.
Thank
I
you,
love it.
Jeannie.
Yes, I appreciate it. Tell me just one last thing. What do you want people to take from the book? What's like your biggest hope? If you're like, I want the reader to walk away from this, or maybe there's a couple of things. What would that be?
There's so much. This I wish I had the book is not in front of me. It's probably upstairs in my room. But I would just like them to know that you can own who you are. You don't have to settle, like I said. You don't have to discount yourself. My aunt Jan, she used to use the example. She said, "Honey, Louis Vuitton don't go on discount. You don't gotta go on discount. So don't
Mm,
put yourself up for discount for anyone, for anything, and don't allow the world to tell you what style, grace, and class or beauty is. You define that yourself, because what the world may say is one thing, God may say a completely different other thing. And I would love for you to be driven by the success that God identifies and validates versus what the world identifies and validates, because those are two totally different things. And remember that you're living a life to live a life again. And at the end of the day, we all, especially as believers, we all want to hear from Christ when he returns. "Well done, my good and faithful servant." And this
yeah,
book kind of just gives you tips from a practical way, from some mistakes that I've made, but also it gives you a way so that you can, because some people are like, "I don't know where to start in the Bible. I don't know how to develop a prayer life." Well, this book is giving you some starting points. So that's what I'm hoping that you'll get from it.
that's amazing. Is there anything else that you'd like to add with us? Share?
Just that I love you and thank you for the opportunity.
Of course. Well, you're beautiful inside and out, and we thank God for how He uses you and will continue to. I'm so excited for this season of your life and
Thank you.
appreciate it.
You're a wonderful soul. It's such a pleasure to chat with you.
Mm.
Thank you.